So the astrology of the week of 20 September 2021 through 26 September 2021 conjures up this metamorphosis theme, this mode of change, of the shifting nature of reality, because we have this full moon in Pisces that is a climax of the summer's astrology and sets us up then for the beginning of fall, which also arrives this week with the sun's entry into Libra, the Libra Ingress, which kicks off the fall season. And so we're initiating some newness here after climaxing in this season of mutable change. All right, let's dive into the charts. Let's get into the astrology. My name is S.J. Anderson. Welcome here. This is a channel where I talk about astrology. Every week I release a long form analysis or breakdown of the astrology of the week as I see it. In the video, what I will provide is first a look at the planetary sign changes, aspects, stations. Secondly, I will look at the moon and the changes that the moon makes in terms of its sign, its zodiac sign. Third, I'm going to break down in chronological order some of the charts I find most important for this week, some of the moments that I think are climaxes are interesting to discuss. And then finally, I'll do a tarot cartomancy reading to encapsulate the moment with an additional set of symbols that can sort of overlay the astrology with a little bit more of a divination. A lot more of a divination when you're pulling random cards. It's kind of a pure divination. So that's what we'll do in the video. And yeah, just to give a little bit of an introduction here, I think this week is really fascinating. It's jam-packed, and I just want to provide the backdrop here of this Aquarian moment we've been in. I've been talking about this a lot on this channel, but Jupiter and Saturn co-present in Aquarius. It started in December at the beginning of, or the end of 2020, and then really gaining steam in the first part of 2021. We had 5 months of Jupiter and Saturn traveling together in Aquarius. And now the rain is going to come, and I'm not going to stop the video. This will just be raining. It's been raining off and on here, so it may rise up and then settle down. Unfortunately, I need to get this recorded, so I'm not going to wait on it. But I think you'll still be able to hear me with this mic. You'll still be able to hear me pretty cleanly. There just may be some background rain. And hey, we're talking about a Pisces full moon that's coming this week. The water sign and the rain is a perfect metaphor for how water can be mutable, because the rain comes and changes everything in an environment. It soaks things in water. The dirt changes, it becomes mud, things come up from under the ground, things are washed away and cleaned, the air then is changed or fresh after the rain. So I kind of love this as a soundtrack for this video. I'm going to try to keep my voice projected as the rain gets loud, and then I'll lower the voice when the rain subsides. But so anyhow, this is back to the introduction here. We've had Jupiter and Saturn co-present since December 2020. They traveled together for 5 months since until mid-May of 2021. And then Jupiter came back into Aquarius to rejoin Saturn there in July, I believe, late July 2021. And so we have a fall moment with heavy-duty Jupiter in. All right, I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna wait for this to subside. Okay, so I did turn the camera off, and now I'm back on. The rain has subsided. But the point I was making was that Jupiter and Saturn are co-present now, and we only have 3 more months of them traveling together. They do that every roughly 20 years. And when Jupiter and Saturn come together, remember, these are the great planets in the astrological system, the greater benefic and the greater malefic. In our systems, and amongst astrologers, it's just known, it's kind of an astrological truth that Jupiter and Saturn meeting provide upheaval. And we have 3.5 months only of this Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius climax to really our whole reality, multi-year climax to the whole reality, but then also a climax to 2021's astrology, as they will both station direct in October within a week from each other, and then we move into that final push to finish out the year. This week provides an ingress with the sun's ingress into Libra and the pre-ingress syzygy for that ingress that really sets the energy for how this final season of this great Aquarian moment that we're in may finish out. That's why this week is so important. So that context, I think, is nice to hear to set the introduction for this week's astrology. And let's just break down and now go into the first phase of this talk, the aspects this week. And you can see here it's a big week, huge week. We've got the sun and moon opposing each other, which is a pop quiz, is a full moon when the sun and moon perfect in opposition. That happens right here on Tuesday where I am, very early Tuesday morning, about 2 a.m. Only an hour before that, Mercury and Jupiter perfect their trine, Libra to Aquarius. And so we have, again, the two planets that rule mutable signs. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Jupiter rules Pisces and Sagittarius. These are the mutable planets, we might say. Those are perfecting an easygoing trine, which is another reason. It's not just that we have the last mutable syzygy until eclipse season, but we also are actually until the full moon. Let's see, the mutable syzygy, the first mutable syzygy will be actually the December solar eclipse. So this is the last mutable syzygy until eclipse season in December. So that punctuates a period of mutation and change. All while that syzygy is square the nodes, right? This is the middle point between eclipse season that we've talked so much about. So the nodes are activating the eclipses, but the two planets ruling those nodes, Jupiter and Mercury, are the mutable planets. They perfect a trine just hours before. So that trine is baked into this full moon. And it really underscores just how much of the shifting nature of the reality that we are in at this moment in time. It's really that summer transition into what fall will be. And then we get to Libra Ingress. That comes here the next day, actually maybe 2 days later, depending on how you're timing it. Technically, it's the next day here in Central Europe, 22 September. That's Wednesday. The sun moves into Libra about 9 in the evening. And that's a huge kickoff to the fall, and I'll talk all about that in this talk. This is one of the charts we really have to break down in quite a bit of detail because of how important it will be to set the table for the energetic feel of the next 3 months. And that happens Wednesday, and then we get Saturday, a Mars trine to Saturn. And so this week it's interesting. There's a lot of mutability. There's 2 trines from Libra to Aquarius, and those trines are baked into the Libra Ingress. And so there's something about this fall that tells us that our thinking, our ideas are going to have an ability to flow with each other and maybe take on some heavy-duty topics, some serious energy because of Mars and Saturn, the 2 heavy-duty, serious, grave planets, making this easygoing trine, that there's something here where we can work together with topics that may be unsavory or hard to talk about. We might have an ability to go into those this fall and address those intellectually with our ideas and with our relationships. So that's a big theme for this fall. I'm just, the mutable nature of thought is another, and language is another, and belief even. Beliefs can change. That's what Jupiter does. That's a gift of Jupiter, is coming to give us new belief systems. We get upgrades in our worldviews when Jupiter gets involved. And with Mercury, we can talk about them and change the language that we're using and identify new phraseology or new expressions. These are all examples of how mutable energy affects the thought form and the linguistic representation. Big here for this moment. And I think for all of the fall, because we're dealing with the air sign. The air sign is, in a way, a mutable element, given that you have Mercury being so important for the air trigon. So that's the introduction of the week. Again, it's a big week. We get this Pisces full moon, and then it comes into the Libra Ingress, and then this Jupiter, this Mars Saturn trine to close out the week. So let's move fast. There's a lot here. I'm going to just keep moving fast here. The moon, what does it do this week? The moon, again, starts the week in a mutable sign in Pisces, and it ends the week in a mutable sign in Gemini. So it's this 2 mutable energies. And remember, right now in the sky, Mars is in a cardinal sign, Saturn is in a fixed sign. And so the only modality that the moon is safe from Mars and Saturn from is the mutable modality. Of course, the nodes are in the mutable modality, so we have to kind of pick. We're caught in a moment where we have to sort of pick our poison. Do we want the moon square to Mars, Saturn, or the nodes? In that case, I usually pick the nodes, and I usually pick the bendings, because that's not the actual north node or south node, it's the sign square to that. And then this week we have that with the Pisces moon that starts the week. And we get the Gemini moon at the end of the week, where the moon will be with the north node. But the theme of this week again is change. We're starting with change, we're ending with change. And in the middle of the week, the moon will either square Saturn or oppose Mars. So there's really no way out of this difficult moon this week, and that's baked into the Libra Ingress as well. The Aries moon in the Libra Ingress opposes its ruler Mars in Libra, and so there's really a martial tone to how the moon is operating for the whole of the fall. We'll get into that chart as well. But I feel like, going with it, trying new things, saying yes to new realities. You may want to use these weekends, the beginning of the week on Monday. Let's see, the moon comes into Aries on Tuesday at 5 in the morning here in Central Europe. So really all a Monday for most of the world, maybe except for down under. You'll get some of early Monday, but there's this sense of being mutable with this Pisces moon. And then at the end, where we will have all day Sunday effectively, except for down under, you'll get a lot of Sunday, but not all of it, where we get this Gemini moon on Sunday. And these might be times to think about getting into the fall and being flexible with how your approach is to the fall energy as it will have arrived here on Wednesday with the solar ingress into Libra. So that's my breakdown of the moon. I think the chart I'm really interested in, it's just kind of a complex one. I don't think I really picked this as my transit of the week, but there is an interesting Taurus moon that we can talk about. It's enclosed between the benefics, and sometimes when you have this kind of pick your poison moments with the moon, nothing's really jumping out here as a really strong transit of the week candidate. Then you have to go into the actual sign and look for how, when the moon makes an aspect to Saturn, is it separating from Saturn? What are the aspects the moon makes to either Venus or Mars? That's when I add that level into how I like to look at pockets of energy. Some astrologers are only about the orb. They don't care as much about the sign relationships. To me, it's all about sign-based activation of a moon and protection of a moon, and then the layer below that is the orb, the way that the moon makes aspects. As a general rule, of course, we always have to look at the orb, the aspects the moon is making, if we're really finding the sweetest spots. So, okay, so let's move. That's the moon this week. We are in a waning moon now, is the other thing to note here. After this full moon on Tuesday, very early in the morning, or Monday in North America, we get a waning energy. This might bring a sense of come down or integration or respite or convalescence from this last couple of weeks here, and climaxing on Monday. It's nice to have a convalescent time with the waning moon. I think, given how, and you'll see in the talk, but the squares to Saturn, the opposition to Mars, and the Libra ingress, there is actually some intensity in the rest. But all right, let's move. First chart I want to look at, 21st September 2021, Tuesday, very early in the morning. This is the Pisces full moon. I'm going to start with this. I'm not going to break down the trine between Jupiter and Mercury at all in this talk. I will just talk about it briefly here. Mercury and Jupiter here in this chart do not make aspects to the full moon, so they're in aversion to the full moon. It's kind of background energy. I think these trines, anytime you see Jupiter and Mercury exchanging positive vibes, it's all about bringing the big into the small and threading those needles. And so there is a vision component here of seeing things and then articulating maybe something we see in the future, bringing it into articulation and planning in the present. I think you may be able to use the Jupiter-Mercury trine as really the preparation for Mercury stationing retrograde, which comes next week. We're in this final week of Mercury being a direct planet. So we want to get, in my view, how I operate, get business out of the way, get big transactions out of the way, get big things done. And then when that Mercury stations and starts moving backward, that first jolt of that is decentering, I find. And so we want to just kind of hunker down. But yeah, you've got this Jupiter Mercury trine. You remember, Jupiter's still in Aquarius. It's filtering through Saturn. Jupiter is not really able to do much here other than maybe provide hope or vision or give what it can give in relation to the confines of Saturn, still can be good energy. I mean, we can still find the opportunities in how we may have been limited, or how the structures of the culture or society are limiting us, or those fixed kind of, I was going to say teeth are fixed. I mean, Saturn does signify bone. But you know, these kind of fixed components of our reality sometimes can be very supportive. We chew the food, you know, with the bone here that's exposed, effectively the teeth. I don't know if teeth are technically bone. That's something for you anatomy folks out there to share with us. But the point here is that's how Jupiter can operate. The gifts that come from these fixed structures and these fixed sort of difficulties with that trine to Mercury in the final week of Mercury's direct movement, that's baked in here. But let's just go here. The Pisces full moon that kicks off this week. It's an hour after that Mercury-Jupiter trine. You know, how is truth emerging from a shifting reality? That's Pisces. Jupiter is always truth, it's hope, it's big ideas, it's the abundance and the freedom that comes from changing the mentality. And I think about the best metaphor, I've been thinking a lot about water, and how when you bring the water out to clean something, it's quite messy often. I don't know if you've ever had to like clean off really dirty clothes or a dirty body. I mean, you have to use the water to clean, but then the dirt gets everywhere on the ground. There's a component to the Piscean. So the first is that's a mutation. We use the water to mutate form. But you know, and it's a freedom from dirt or from the messiness. The water provides us the freedom. It addresses any kind of dirt or grime. And again, it's a mutation from one state to another using the water. This is how I think about Pisces, but part of the process is a difficulty. You know, Pisces is not one that shies away from going into dirt, examining dirt, moving the dirt away. And sometimes when Pisces gets activated, we're feeling that quite intensely, like, oh, this is yucky and messy and dirty. Well, let that water work. Let it clean and cleanse. And I think that's how I'm really seeing this moon here, as a cleansing moment where maybe we're getting into some grime because of these other configurations in the chart. Remember, this moon is ruled by Saturn and Jupiter. Again, Saturn and Jupiter are co-present in Aquarius. They make no aspect to the moon, so they're not really providing seeing support through the aspect. But it's bringing us back into almost a grimy truth moment here, where there's a lot of stuff going on in the sky. In this chart also, we have Jupiter being ruled by Saturn, but Mars and Venus are both exiled and they're in each other's signs. That's a difficult energy, with these two planets in exile and then needing each other but not really being able to communicate. There was a thread on Twitter this week. I tweeted about the idea of aversion in this particular context of the exchange of signs between Mars and Venus right now. Without that aspect, there's not much support, and they're in a part of the sky where they're both suffering. And so maybe there is some kind of, someone, I forgot who tweeted this, but the idea is that you don't talk to someone if you're hurting, you save them from your pain. I think there's some of that here, where we're maybe in a more of a solitary, isolated time. Saturn, of course, is always solitary in Aquarius, and isolating it can be. But these other two rulers, every other planet is ruled by either Mars, Venus, or Saturn. Those are the three final dispositors, and two of them are in exile and they can't communicate with their own ruler. So if you're feeling alone this week, or sad, or broken, or things are getting dredged up from the past, old emotional wounds, I know I've been experiencing a little bit of that, just feeling some of that deep emotional kind of woundedness, and seeing some of my inner, patterns and some of the things I'm working through still as a healing adult who's committed to healing. Some of these long-standing patterns, there's seasons when they can emerge and be brought up for us to get reacquainted with. And sometimes it's even good to just acknowledge, yeah, I've come a long way. Wow, look at this pattern and this emotion, this tendency emerged, and my actions are still healthy. I didn't really do anything flawed. I just sort of felt things. That's so much of where the scorpionic opportunity can be, especially with this Venus and Mars exchanging. There can be solitary opportunities for process and for healing. But see, that's all baked into this syzygy, into this full moon. That's why I'm talking about it here. I also think that the change that I spoke about in the introduction of this 9 months this year of Jupiter Saturn co-present. Remember, they're both ruling the syzygy, Jupiter by domicile, Saturn by Egyptian terms, and then they're together. That's why I wanted to start with that in my introduction, because this syzygy is a punctuation saying, all right, boom, think about all the shifts and the changes and the grime in our collective reality and the truth that's emerging, and how, you know, maybe we're seeing things, or you're having awareness of how reality it really is, you know, as best as we can. That's constant. That's an ongoing project. There's no stopping exploring what is real, what is truth, and there's different answers. You know, one answer doesn't fit all, but it's a dynamic process, constant mutation and change. But think about it in the context, again, of 2021 and Jupiter and Saturn co-present in Aquarius, and all of these Saturnine, Aquarian, you know, impositions that we're living through. It's really profound in a way. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say about this Pisces new moon. The second thing here is that the Venus in Scorpio is the only planet that makes an aspect. So there is only one planet here. Venus trines the moon by sign and sextiles the sun. They're in Virgo by sign. So it really underscores what I just mentioned about the scorpionic opportunities that can come with Venus and Scorpio. It's tough, it's challenging, it can be grief-oriented, seeing the depths of the kind of selfhood and maybe how pleasures might have discentered us, or how our understanding of relating in the past has been misguided. Or I like this as a transit of owning the self, owning the kind of flaws in the self. In my experience, that's the best way to improve in relationship, is to own my own faults and examine my faults and the mistakes I've made and really own it. It's not blaming anybody else. And that can be a tough thing to face. It's like, okay, yeah, I saw that. I made some mistakes. Cool. I want to heal that. Show me how to heal, and be willing to do new actions. But this is a moment of the feeling the grief, and the grief of maybe past loss or regret or sadness about the past. So remember, Venus is here in Scorpio making that aspect. This is the kind of support we're getting in this mutable syzygy. We also know that Jupiter and Venus are both ruled by malefics. So Jupiter is filtering through Mars. Pardon me, I know I start with Jupiter a lot here. Venus is filtering through Mars and Scorpio, and Jupiter filters through Saturn and Aquarius. It's heavy duty energy is one thing we can say clearly here. This week, this fall, I think it's going to be heavy duty. Serious energies, deep kind of grief on a collective level, on a personal level. Remember, we're heading into fall. Things are dying, nature's dying, and the sun is getting less and less and less. Fall can be a time of preparation for the winter. And, you know, that can be sad to let go of maybe the summer months. Just at that level of symbolism, there's some grief. But I think it's also about the collective turn of our reality over the last 18 months. That's certainly still active and still in play and still an ongoing thing. So just feel your grief and feel your sadness this fall. This syzygy bakes in that energy, not only for the next 2 weeks, but some astrologers look at the pre-ingress syzygy as another syzygy that can kick into the full 3 months of a season. The syzygy does it. So we would be looking at this chart, actually. It's not too different than the sun's ingress into Libra, so a lot of the same themes are here. And so I just have the rest of what I've written here is exactly what I just said, and introduction of new norms. And this can be positive. Look, we've got new norms in life, new norms about how we are engaged in public, new norms about how we behave online and the importance of the online lifestyle. You know, you can use some of these norms for your advantage. How can you exploit them to benefit you and integrate your life into this newness? Because this is our lives now, or how can you maybe avoid this kind of collective turn into more technology? Maybe you want to go to a farm. Maybe that will be your new norm, or your newness of this Aquarian season and this Aquarian shift that we've all undergone that lasts, the biggest thrust of it lasts only for 3.5 more months. So then the final thing I want to point out here is that this syzygy, the moon is conjoined this fixed star, Alphavage, Azelphaphagy. So let's just, I hope that's probably not the right pronunciation, but at least it's a flowing pronunciation. Azelphaphagy is this fixed star in the tail of Cygnus, the swan. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful symbol for how mutable our moment is. I love that this symbol came up working through the fixed star here, conjoining the full moon, because it's the symbol of Leda, or of the swan here. Jupiter became this swan, Cygnus. He turned himself into the swan to meet Leda, and then they copulated, however that happened. Greek myths it's always often unclear exactly the details, but they basically combined and had offspring. Leda was kind of tricked by this god Zeus into producing offspring with them because he changed his form. The notion here is that we can change form to be generative. Jupiter itself signifies generation or the generative powers. And thinking about mutable season, what forms are you maybe changing into right now? During this next couple of weeks till the next syzygy, is there something you need to do, a new hat you could put on? And even a cleansing, remember it's Pisces, so the water, the washing away. Thinking about mutating from using the cleansing and healing force that water can be to mutate into a form that may be more constructive and beneficial to your endeavors and to your goals. That is baked into the symbol, and I just absolutely love it. The other note I had here was that giving sometimes means that we put ourselves in the shoes of who we want to give a gift to. We have to mutate sometimes to understand when we want to become a Zeus or a Jupiterian gift giver. It's good to think about the other person and think about the people around us in an empathetic way and not thinking about our own needs so often. Not that we abandon ourselves, don't get me wrong, but just try it out for like 10 minutes. Okay, what do they want? How can I serve these people? By coming into what they know, what I know they like, or how they have shown me they want to be related to. We can sort of morph into our own version of this swan and then meet people where they're at. And so, yeah, and the last thing, just don't forget, there was 2 mutable syzygies. We had the new moon in Virgo, now the full moon in Pisces. Those are square by sign, the nodes of the moon, telling us we're halfway through eclipse season. There's some eclipsiness here. And I think this is the bridge syzygy season that bridges this next eclipse season, which will come in November and December. So just if you're feeling that, you can kind of settle into a little bit of that. That solar eclipse in Sagittarius will be ruled by Jupiter. So these ideas of Jupiter as a healing force and how it can change and mutate will apply to that eclipse as well. It's a Sagittarian version of it, which is a little bit different. We won't go into that in this talk. So next chart in chronological order. This is Wednesday, 9/22 here in Central Europe, the Libra Ingress. Very, very important chart. This is the symbolic stamp of the fall's energy. This will tell us all about the fall and the themes. Now, I won't delineate this for the location you're in, but that's usually how this is done. You pull up this exact chart for the moment of time in the capital city of the country you're in. That will tell you some themes about maybe your nation, or what's happening in your nation. The same with the pre-Ingress syzygy. You can pull that syzygy chart up for your country and look in just where the rising sign is, where the ruler of the rising sign is. Those are the 2 things I would focus on. So, okay, Libra Ingress, let's just break it down. The biggest thing I see, one of the biggest things, Mars is with the sun close. It's about 6 degrees from the sun. Mars is trine Saturn, applying very, very close, 1 degree. And Mars rules the moon in Aries. So in a way, Mars, and remember Mars is a final dispositor here. It's exchanging signs with Venus, but the rulership flow does have to deal with Mars and then deal with Venus and Scorpio and then Mars and Libra. There's no way out of this Mars having great force here. And in a way, it's not sad, but I mean, this is a Mars that is in an unorthodox energetic. It's in a part of the sky that's not comfortable for Mars. And so same with Venus. These 2 planets have been given great responsibility in this ingress, and they're decentered and dislodged. This is why I think the fall months, this will be a theme this fall of dislodgement and decentering, pain, truth, stepping into those things. And really for healing. We have to assume it will always be for healing when you see pain or difficulty. But this is very airy. You've got 5 of the 7 traditional in these air signs trining each other. 2 of them within orb making trines. So, it brings in here, what do I have? Mental power, formulating mental power. Mars and Saturn are planets of power and force and dynamism and change through difficulty and through, basically when they get involved, there's like nothing we can do. I mean, they just force us into things. And these are the signs of the air, the mentality, the writing, the thought form, the technologies, the rules, the laws. All of these things are in play this fall. And I think it could have to do with like the collective regulations and reforms that have set in with respect to new kind of technologies for access in society. You know what I'm talking about? I think that those themes become very prominent this fall, especially as we descend into the respiratory illness cycles that will inevitably arrive when the weather gets cold. This to me feels ripe for some really dynamic figuring out of the collective around how we're going to deal with technology integrating into our lives. In a half year, every fall we need others to survive. This is a point about just the symbolism of Mars and the Sun in Libra. Libra is a connective sign. It's a sign of communication and connection, and because it's ruled by Venus, the planet of connection, it's ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication. You're communicating to others. So it's a communicative sign. Mars and Saturn are fiery energies of selfhood and dynamism and maverickism and sort of separating out. They're less concerned with other people. And so those two planets that are great fiery maverick planets are, I wasn't say trapped, but they're just filtering here now through this collective necessity and this, they're having to engage with others. So we need others to survive every fall. I think that's some of the symbolism of Libra then into Scorpio. We have to like plan with others, get the food stocked in the fridge. I'm talking about like in a more agrarian environment. You get things in the freezer, you get the pickled vegetables stacked up and ready to eat all winter. There's a lot of planning and using other people, planning with other people in Libra season in the Northern Hemisphere always. That's why I think Libra is a communal sign. Remember, Saturn rules agriculture. Saturn is exalted in Libra. There's something about the harvesting and prepping for winter with Libra season and with the whole fall season. We're falling into winter, but we're preparing for that. So there's communal actions, mutual aid. This modern signification of Aquarius as the communal sign of this very kind of the collective energy. A lot of people will say that Aquarius is about that. I do think it does connote that through not only the air sign being connective through how we talk to others, but Saturn it's known in the ancient texts as being the serfs, like the masses of people that work the land. That's like there's a collective element to Saturn, like collectivized agriculture. The Saturn symbol does sort of look like the sickle and hammer when you compare them with those symbols, and that's all about collective agriculture. Those societies that use that symbol. And so, I think that with Saturn trining this, it's almost like Saturn and ruling by exaltation. These fiery maverick planets have to kind of give way here and let this trine from Saturn and Jupiter try to support them as they struggle to be in the crowd, to maybe feel isolated in the crowd, to be unable to express fully because of a crowd-like structure. We may need to rely on things like the long-standing ideas or people that we know that can be a rock for us as we get into more of a kind of impersonal or collective turn with the reality for the next 3 months. So that's the big thing here, the kind of collective and communal action, and maybe the anger or rage that can't quite come out or isn't allowed to be expressed by having to sort of give over a little bit to the society and the rules that are being imposed. I mean, quite frankly. So let me come back to the next sign here. I think that's it on the Libra Ingress, actually. I don't have anything much more to say on it. That's my kind of short examination of it. So let's move to the next sign, to the next chart rather. 25 September, Saturday. This is the moon now. Has moved into Taurus here, and it is enclosed between Venus and Jupiter. This would be my transit of the week. I thought about picking something in Gemini, but the moon's a little closer to the north node for my liking there. And Mercury I don't know, maybe you could do something in early Gemini, but the thing is, in early Gemini this round, the moon has to hit up against Mars and Saturn. We are going to look at that chart, but there's just a little too much Mars and Saturn with that early Gemini lunar transit on Sunday. That's not my transit of the week. I picked this one kind of reluctantly. The moon is here 11 degrees from Saturn separating. The moon will have, but the aspects kind of convince me here, separating from an opposition to Venus, applying to a trine to Jupiter. So the moon is carrying the light of Venus into Jupiter. That really protects it in Taurus, even though there's a sign-based square from Saturn. Look, this isn't ideal, but it's the one I would pick. Look at this here. You've got this lunar mansion. It's the fourth lunar dimension, Aldebaran. It's good for work, craftsmanship, trade, defeating enemies, removing obstacles. When I saw that removing obstacle summary from lunarium.co.uk, my favorite website for lunar mansions, it made me kind of less worried about Saturn playing this kind of dynamic role here, because I think this mansion where the moon is, with the protection of the benefics there so close, then maybe we can work with what Saturn, the obstacle Saturn, will provide here with this Taurus moon. Remember Taurus, the essence here, enmity, struggle, conflict, argument, anger, violent passion. This is the side of Taurus and Venus that isn't that sweet, beautiful, sweet color side. I mean, it's the side where Venus is a protectress. It wants to protect relationships, fight for love, the kind of challenging side. And then this mansion also extends into a little bit into Gemini. That can be an energy of fighting for love, fighting for relationship. You remember the Lover's card is associated with Gemini in the Tarot, and you see the fight over relationships there. So I'm just thinking this is a nice time to maybe struggle a little bit against the backdrop of some of the changes into the fall, some of the intensities we've already described. Maybe you'll be able to just kind of put your feet to the fire, maybe that's not the right phrase here, just put your feet to work. Craftsmanship, trade, Venus and earth signs can be about building as well. Maybe you'll build some art or build something beautiful around your house as a way to kind of put your head down and sort of overcome some of the other limitations. That's the kind of energy I would look for here during this transit. And this is going to be Saturday in the morning, Friday evening, Saturday morning for a few hours here in Central Europe, Friday night there in North America. Let's move here. This is actually the Gemini mansion, because the moon is enclosed here still in this mansion. And I bring the fifth lunar mansion in just to understand, if we're using mansions, there is, actually, why am I bringing this in? Let me see here. So there's nothing for me to bring in here, no. Oh, actually, yes, it is. Sorry, I see it here. 21 degrees Taurus. The moon will perfect the square with Jupiter in Aquarius in the 23rd degree of Taurus. And that's why this mansion comes in. The latter part of this lunar enclosure will include a more Taurus Gemini energy. This is good for studies, intellectual activities, artistic activities. That's where I think we can bring the Venus producing art and workmanship style of Venus here Saturday. So that's really it. That artistic, workmanlike component might be able to save us from some of the more intense energies that surrounds this moon here on Friday, Saturday. And if you're ever, I'm not producing the exact times in this talk because, it's just, many people out there are on different time zones all over the world. I'm trying to just give you a general sense. Sometimes as these energies build, they can be operative kind of before and during, and you have the time listed here. You can see it, 3 a.m. in Central Europe. You can always convert that. When I put a chart on my transit of the week, it's always the best chart I can find in terms of getting the moon powerful when it's enclosed. So you can just plug this into your time zone calculator and figure out when this might climax for you where you are. Okay, let me move here. The next chart is on Saturday. Again, a chart on Saturday. This is later in the day. So the first chart is at 3 in the morning, Saturday in Central Europe. This chart is at 11:30 at night in Central Europe. We have the Saturn-Mars trine, which is a story that defines the fall. Remember, this applying trine is baked into the pre-Ingress syzygy chart, the full moon in Pisces we've already examined, and in the Libra Ingress chart. This energy of how Saturn and Mars, Libra, Aquarius can relate and work together through an easygoing trine is very important energy for the next period. Remember, Mars is in superior position. I made a tweet about this today. I saw some really kind of shocking images of some protests down under today. And my first thought was, what's Mars doing in Saturn? Because when they can exchange, that's when I've seen so often these kind of revolts and battles with authority. And it just occurred to me that Mars is now having this superior position here. So Mars is earlier in the zodiac. In late October and in November, Mars will be making a square to Saturn from Scorpio earlier in the zodiac. That's when I really think some of this upheaval and kind of unrest might really trigger up here in the fall is November. So, it's just buckle down because Mars-Saturn squares and fixed signs are when they have been battling out all of 2021. Remember, we started 2021 with Mars coming into Taurus, squaring Saturn. We had Mars opposite Saturn in Leo. That was a really powerful moment for this kind of collective upheaval in terms of unrest. And now we'll get a square where Mars is in superior position in November. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the point I'm making now is that Mars has some advantages over Saturn. Now, Saturn does rule Libra by exaltation, so there's a sense of them working together, but Mars, because of where it's positioned, must be handled here. It has a little bit of some negotiating power. I have here, working in relationship has limitation. This is part of what we have to learn with Mars. It's not just the maverick, I get to do whatever I want and get to move and separate and say no. Mars has to then work within relationship. And remember, we have to accept that and benefit from the stability others can provide. That's what I think the Saturn is doing here. It provides stability. Think about your successful work with others in your life. There's always someone that's maybe done a good job, showed up, did what they said they were going to do, provided the honesty and the support in a group setting. There's reliable people out there. I think we need to find those people this fall. Find that Saturn in Aquarius for you that can help your Mars, and you can lean into this person as you're trying to act in this fall, and what may be a difficult fall. So that's how I'm going to delineate this trine. I've talked about it a bunch already in the talk when we broke down the Libra Ingress and the full moon in Pisces. So I'm going to move here, the final chart. This is that grand air trine that comes on Sunday, about 5 in the afternoon in Central Europe. So the moon moves into Gemini there on Sunday. I think it was a Sunday morning pretty early. But the moon will be enclosed. They'll all be in the 7th degree of their respective signs, the 8th degree or 7 degrees of their respective signs. And this trine, these grand trines are real opportunities. They can provide a potent kind of flow where we can sort of settle into power and let that power fuel us. Air signs are always thinking, ideas, discussions, communication, movement, relational, agreement-oriented. But remember, we have an enclosed moon very in between Saturn and Mars. We also have the Saturn and Mars energetic, which I spoke about earlier in the talk, those two planets being heavy planets. I think this kind of chart is good for discussing difficulty with people that you can find that support you. So you find those supportive friends or family members, and you can bring up real difficult issues when you have energy like this. Now the moon is going to be enclosed. That can be uncomfortable. So you may wait until the moon comes, separates from that 7th degree. That might be a little bit easier as you're waning, but you still get to capture that Mars-Saturn trine. And this lunar mansion, Alhana, is good for love, friendship, relationships, business, making alliances. I think that the moon is under pressure. It's very mixed testimony because it's the grand trine, which we think of as supportive, but it's the malefic planets pinching the moon, which can be destabilizing. So just know, more than anything, I wouldn't do anything during a moment like this until the moon is separated, like I said, and probably wouldn't do anything anyway with the moon being so close to the north node. I just wanted to make you aware, really, of the heaviness and the gravity of our love and friendship, right? Relationships. That's what this is a mansion that's good for, making alliances. But it fused with Saturn, coldness, restriction, intensity, Mars, force, power, acrimony. Those are the energies that get blended in here for our love, friendship, relationships, and alliance making. So just know if this comes up, you might want to turn and pivot the tension as an opportunity, and that's how this might manifest. Something emerges, but it's a real opportunity to flow and communicate about challenge. So much of that can bring people together. We connect in our brokenness and in our, that's what intimacy is. You let people into your brokenness and then you coalesce with people around that brokenness. So that's there on Sunday, really good energy for that. That is the weekly astrology. Thanks for being here. Let's turn now to the tarot reading and let's pull some cards. The first card is, okay, let me just get this worked here. The first card is, let me just, on my random number generator settings, is 14 in my numbering system. Let's see what card that corresponds to with the playing card system. That is going to be the Queen of Clubs. That's the Leo energy. This would be in the tarot, if you're thinking about major arcana, this might be the Lust card, or the what's the name in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Strength card, where it's a powerful woman that can engage with that fire and is able to form and utilize fire. That's the Leonian energy. And that's what I love about these correspondences that I have, is that the queens, you'll see it all. I won't list them all, but you often have like a so-called masculine or energy like Leo and solar, but it's represented in the cards as a queen. And so there's playing with gender when you do this and showing us that the different genders, actually we carry them inside of us. I love how this correspondence system can do it. What's the other one? Like the Chariot is a male figure. That's a powerful male figure in the traditional system, but it corresponds to Cancer in this system. The King of Cups, or the King, in this case, of Hearts, would be a king, yet it's a feminine lunar energy. So it's just beautiful how these correspondence systems can balance things out in that way. But let's go here to delineate. Again, I've been speaking about Sagittarius. We had eclipses in Sagittarius since June 5th, 2020. Thinking about those Jupiter-ruled eclipses, now that we'll have a syzygy in Pisces and we have a Jupiter-ruled full moon this week. You know, how have your beliefs changed? How have the ways you access abundance changed with eclipses so far? How is that eclipse story, which is almost ending, because we only have one more eclipse along that axis? You know, this syzygy, this Jupiter-ruled syzygy, is a time to think about and just process your eclipse story for the last, 18 months, or like 15 months. We'll have 3 or 4 more months of it. The other thing I would think about here is, just, looking back on times when maybe there was a little bit more free-flowing abundance in the world. Remember that Jupiter and Sag transit in 2019, and just the sense of optimism that we all took it for granted, right? Because we didn't know a crisis was coming that would heavily restrict us. And so then we can use this as just a reflection and look back. Yeah, that was such a cool time. I was traveling all over. There was no questions about, could I travel somewhere? Could I not? There was no worries about going out in public and what may or may not happen. And looking, now that we know what we had, that's the kind of reflection that's Jupiterian in a way, because it taps into these deeper sense of appreciation, hope, and love that can so often be related to Jupiter. So that's where I'm going to go with this. Let me get the second card. This will be the Tarot of Marseille deck. The third card, that I believe is the Priestess, the High Priestess, but let's just double check. That will be from the Jean Dodal Tarot. Yes, we've got the High Priestess. And this is the card that corresponds to the Moon. Yeah, this is the Moon. This is the card corresponding to the Moon. The Moon card corresponds to Pisces. This card corresponds to the Moon. And, I just talked all about... Well, I didn't talk about the moon much in this talk, actually. Where can the moon come in? It's foresight. That's what Vedic Valens tells us. The moon rules foresight. And this is a magiciatrix. This is a witch energy, the witchiness of how we can sort of use our lunar side. I think about the moon cycles and just how important they are to most magical workings. That's what I see in this card. But it can apply, getting into your own sense of connection to the cycles and flows of the moon, if that's something you want to develop a relationship. Maybe this is also pointing us to how the moon will work this week. Remember that air trine that comes up on the weekend? The moon is the third node of that grand air trine. So maybe there's something here with the Mercury-Moon combination of Gemini and the kind of magical energy that maybe we can get in touch with. I also think this can imply a darkness and a sort of hidden feature. Remember, the moon hides. It's always changing, and half of it's hidden, and sometimes where is the moon, or where can I see it? These kinds of questions. There's something about our work with the spiritual that has to be constantly changing. And it's relating to this mutable season. That's where I want to tie this in, that we're in a changing and shifting field. And with the spiritual practices and the magical practices, it's good to wear them loose and sort of adapt them to the current needs. That's really what I would say. Like, if I'm moving apartments, I've got to find a new place to meditate. Let me find that chair and adapt. Maybe the rhythms I had been in before need to be adapted to maintain the quality of connection. Thinking about that as we get into maybe a difficult period with this Libra ingress and the squares with Saturn and Mars that are coming this fall, and those malefic dominance in the Libra ingress. We may need to be adaptable with our magic and even turn inward. Anytime I see this, it's just get inward, turn inward, pray, call out to your spiritual guides, as it were, and see if you can get some guidance for the fall. So that is the weekly astrology. That is the weekly tarot. Thanks for being here. This is S.J. Anderson. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking and subscribing the video. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, a tarot reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep the videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.